All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a great podcast today. I'm sitting with a gentleman that does a lot of mental training, a lot of like warrior spirit work. So obviously it's something that I'm interested in, and I'm excited to hear his perspectives. Right before I get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Desi Mayner. Did I say that right, Mayner?
Desi.
Yep. Desi Mayner. I know you lightly looked into our podcast a little bit, but This is how I kind of start all the episodes. I don't want to talk about the man that you are today yet. I want to take it all the way back. I want to know where you were born and raised, what you were like as a young kid, what the family was like. What were the things that shaped you into the man that you are today? And then we'll get to your story.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Sounds good. So, I mean, kind of all-American family, honestly. You know, Dad worked at General Motors. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. She cleaned some houses every now and then. I'm the oldest at 3, got a younger brother, and then the youngest one is my little sister. And I started out in Davison, actually, so not too far from here. Then we moved to Tennessee for a year because General Motors was going to shut down. So Dad moved out there to the Saturn plant. And then when it didn't, we came back. So I did second grade in Tennessee, which was amazing and gorgeous. And looking back, I probably would have never wanted to come home. But so I've been in Linden, Michigan ever since third grade. Graduated there, went to high school there, and then actually circled back and taught and coached there for 10 years after that before we got into my new career now. So kind of Linden Eagle to and through, which is kind of funny because I was also an Eastern Michigan Eagle to and through for 4 years.
All-American, Eagle in high school, Eagle in college. It makes sense.
Yeah, and then I transferred to Saginaw Valley. And we'll get into that in my football days. So I was a Cardinal. So I've been like a bird my whole life, apparently. But, so, I mean, after got into high school, really, I mean, I guess it started back in middle school. I mean, 3 sports, football, basketball, baseball. Started lifting weights, towards the end part of middle school. And kind of it all started in 8th grade. I got this award. It was called the Claude Cranston Award. And he was a guy way back in the day. I actually got to meet him in person, which was pretty cool. Just an icon in our local area. Was a coach, I want to say he was All-American athlete too. And it was given to one person in the entire middle school that basically portrayed athleticism, character, and academics. And when I got that award, everything kind of changed. I think I had realized what I was doing. Before then, I was just kind of doing the best I could. Like I like to be good. I like to beat other humans in anything, really. And that was the moment I was like, oh, you know what? I might be onto something here. I set a couple scoring records in middle school for basketball and things like that. But that was kind of the day that I was like, you know what? I think this is going to be a serious thing for me. So that's when kind of the dream came true of like, I'm going to play football in college. So from there on out, it was like balls to the wall, 100% full go. I'm not stopping for anything less than a Division I full scholarship for football. So I put a lot of work in. I said 3 sports in middle school. It was 4 sports in high school because I power lifted also, right? So in the winter, I would power lift on the weekends. So I'd play like a basketball game Friday night, and then I would go to a powerlifting competition on Saturday morning, right? Just to train for football further, right? So that was kind of a whirlwind. I used to laugh about it because I would come home after school like 3 days a year, maybe. Like if I'm going to go home after school. No, then I was usually at school till like 7:30 at night. I remember one day I practiced basketball right after school. Then I took hitting practice after that for baseball. And then I went into the weight room to do like a 6 p.m. training session with my powerlifting coach. Right. And then I went home and I probably ate 7 meals throughout that day also. Right. Because as a teenager in high school and I was trying to, gain weight and gain muscle, I'm eating like a horse. So, I mean, from there, it just kind of evolved, honestly. The man that made all the difference in my life was my dad. He was one of the few percentages of parents that can like objectively look at their kid and their talent and like be okay with it, and know the shortcomings and know what they're actually good at, and kind of coach around that. So I always say like my dad was my first mental game coach. He would give it to me real. He would push me when I need pushed. He would challenge when I need challenged, and he would love me when I need loving, and that became really, really, really important to me. A lot of people probably were looking in and thought that he was pressuring me, but it was kind of the opposite. The lack of pressure is what put me in the driver's seat to put my own pressure on myself, which was really cool. And I'm sure I did way too much of it. But so kind of the way that panned out, I ended up getting a full ride scholarship to Eastern Michigan University, right? So I played football there for 4 years and went through, all kinds of ups and downs and tough coaches and, and this and that, and injuries, set some records in the bench press and the squat lifting, and played in front of 110,000 at the University of Michigan, national television. I was a center. I sailed a snap over my quarterback's head on national television. Also screwed up a block and put my quarterback under the knife and in surgery, also on national television. So I had a lot of ups and downs. After 4 years, I made the move to Saginaw Valley to play football there. I did that because my brother played there. He played football and baseball there, and he was a quarterback, and I was a center. So I transferred my last year to kind of hang out with him and be with him. And then I ended up actually getting more looks there from the NFL than I was at Eastern Michigan. And Saginaw Valley was amazing. I had the time of my life. Kind of got back to my roots in football and really enjoyed the team there, enjoyed the family. It was a great decision for me. Was first team all GLIAC, and got some pretty decent looks. I was part of the East Coast Bowl, part of the Cactus Bowl, the Valero Cactus Bowl down in Texas. That was a really good time. And had some tough decisions to make. It's always tough when someone says that you're probably done. Like they told me, they were like, Canada is great. You could go there for 2 or 3 years and develop, or you could go to Europe for 2 or 3 years and develop. You're the right size, but you're not quite heavy enough, or you're just slightly not strong enough, or we need just a little bit more speed. I remember lining up at that Cactus Bowl, and they had us like almost like a meat market, man. Like we were like in nothing but our girdle, right? And they're walking, they'd like feel your shoulders, like, do the, hey, what's up? And smack you on the back. And then you would walk in front like Desi Mayner, Saginaw Valley State University, 6'3", 297 pounds. 40 was 4.9 and all those types of things. And you're just like, I just feel like I might as well like moo right now or something. Like, honestly. But it was a great time. But I mean, just, tough decisions. So I made the call. I hadn't gotten injured really badly. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go into what I went to go into, and that was to teach and coach. So I was a special education teacher for 10 years. And, this is kind of a little bit more reflection and insight, kind of looking back. But that's kind of where my competitive edge softened. I was helping other athletes, for sure. I was coaching my heart out and loving it, but I wasn't competing anymore. So I kind of went 10 years not competing, which was insane for me. Like, I don't know how I fell into that. I don't even know. Like, I still trained, I still worked out, and I still coached like crazy. And I got a lot of players that would tell a lot of crazy stories about how I used to coach too, fresh out of college. I'm sure I was all full of piss and vinegar, right? But so 10 years kind of teaching and coaching. And from there, my dad passed away. He went from completely healthy one night, went out to dinner, and he passed away that night, fully unexpectedly. And it blew my world up, honestly. And actually, about 18 months before my dad was my grandpa, who was my dad's dad. And he was kind of the other influential man in my life. And like, these are the two guys that I learned everything from. I learned how to be a man. I learned how to play football, basketball, baseball, hunt, fish, how to be a father, all of the things, right? From these two guys, and they were now gone. And that completely rocked my world. I mean, pretty much full-on identity crisis, honestly. I mean, it became very, very clear to me over a source of probably 3 to 6 months that I wasn't supposed to be a teacher anymore. And I had no idea why. I mean, I just kept coming home and telling my wife, like, I'm not supposed to be here anymore. I don't know where I'm supposed to be, but I'm not supposed to be here. What are you supposed to do? I'm like, I don't know, but it's not supposed to be here. I should be doing something more intense, more competitive, and living out my true life, because what the heck? My dad was 58. I'm like 30. That's like, I'm half over, if that's the case, right? Which is kind of a morbid way to look at it, honestly. But for me, I'm like, I need to go bigger. I need to go faster. I need to go stronger. And I need to become more intense on a larger scale, right? I love what I was doing, and I was really good at it, honestly. But I'm like, but we need to reach more, and we need to reach it more intensely. So,
man, you have told so many things that I can't wait to ask questions about, and I'm already intrigued.
That's good, because I'm out of breath now, dude.
No, and I'm fascinated by your story, man. And there's a lot of really important aspects for us to look into to understand the man that you are today and why you can have such an impact on people.
Yeah.
So I want to start kind of earlier in your story. As a young kid playing 3 sports in middle school, 4 sports in high school,
Yep.
There's a lot of fire there. Where do you think that competitive drive and that fire came from? And what kept you on the routines? Talking about, I only went home 3 days during a year, probably after school. So you were staying in this insanely driven routine of just getting it done, where most people lack motivation, they get off track. You were just a machine, just crushing it.
Yeah.
Where do you think that came from? Where did that fire come from? And what were the things that kept you on track? Was it innate? Was it something that was just a part of you? Was it your father's reinforcement? Like, let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back on it, and I've dug through this before because I love this deep work. And I've done a ton of it, over the course of the last five years. But it came from seeing the consistency of my dad and my grandpa. Right. And it's one of the pillars that I kind of stand on today. I even tell my wife, like, I love through consistency. Like, you're going to get the same guy every single day in, day out, crisis mode or not crisis mode, like highs, lows, like I'm going to show up and I'm going to give you the same effort every single day. Because that's what my dad did. Whether it's 5 days a week, 12 hours a day, or 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, you got the same guy with the same energy who, after he worked 7 days, 12 hours, he would still play catch with you. He would still be there at the game. And my grandpa was the exact same way. I remember, this is crazy, I was mopping I was like sweeping the garage out or something. It was like after a practice, something I was doing with my grandpa. And my grandpa never swore, okay? He never cussed. And I remember him looking at me, and I was like probably 14, right? So just snotty-nosed teenager. And he's like, if you're going to do it half-assed, don't do it at all. And I was like, whoa. What did you say? Like, it threw my world. And that was like, oh, okay. So everything in life then, you know what I mean? Which was the lesson I was learning in my head. But I mean, that's just an example of who these guys were every day.
You had some amazing male role models. Between your father and your grandfather, you were incredibly blessed that you had amazing men that showed you how to be men in this world.
Absolutely.
And gave you kind of like a blueprint to a proper identity that would matter to you. Like,
Absolutely.
Hey, growing up into being a powerful man, a leader, someone with consistency, someone that shows up for themselves and others. And if you're going to do something, you go all in, you give your best. Like, don't insult our lineage with the way you're sweeping the floor right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to make it extreme, but that's those type of men, right? They're like, no, you step up in everything that you do. So you had amazing men in your life as a young man.
So blessed. And my parents and both sets of grandparents, right, all married until death do us part. So both of I had all 4 grandparents almost my entire athletic career going up until, I just lost grandpa. I still have the other 3, which is crazy, right? And then my mom and dad till death do us part. So, and my wife's side. So just excellent, just so blessed with the role models that I've had in my life and have helped me build who I am today, just like you're talking about.
And I don't think that's coincidental. If you have extremely strong people in your family that care about their values, that have morals, that have work ethic and consistency and show up for each other and learn from losses and can face the struggles, with some bravery and courage. Yep. It's not a shock to me that you have this extremely strong family unit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's almost an if-then formula. If you have these type of ingredients, you're going to get this result. Yeah. It makes sense to me. So did you have a large friend group by being a kid that was so driven, so dialed in? You were probably an inspiration for other kids. You're playing all these different sports. They see you on all these different teams. You're a workhorse. You're an animal. Did you find that was like inspirational enough to other children that you had a decent friend group or you were welcomed where you went, and that probably helped, on growing up?
You're hitting the pin of the heart on things, which is just awesome, because like these are the conversations I have with leaders, right? No, honestly, I think because I was so driven and so results and goal oriented that my team were my friends. Outside of that, if I was popular, it was because I was good at a sport. And I wasn't weird looking and I got good grades.
They couldn't really relate to you because you were living in a way that was completely different. I mean, you were goal-oriented and smashing towards success at a young age, where most kids are lost. They're trying to find themselves. They just want to hang out. They want to chill. They're not in a routine that they think consistency is going to yield a high-caliber version of themselves. You were.
I got called arrogant so many times. Arrogant, conceited, overconfident. All the time, man. Like, I struggled with it greatly in high school because I was like, I'm just confident. I know what I can do. And maybe I think I can do a little more than I can, but I have to think like that. My goal is huge and I'm going to reach it.
Are you mad at me because I have self-belief? Are you upset because I want to be a winner? Are you angry that I am refusing to settle at the level I'm at and I will not accept mediocrity? I will not accept a monotonous routine. You know what I mean? So I tell my fighters in here all the time, I don't care at all if people think you're overly confident or too powerful of a figure. You radiate too much energy. That is their own opinion of you. You need that type of energy to achieve your goals.
Absolutely.
You're not going to get to the top by being like, why don't I suppress myself so that other people are more comfortable?
Not going to happen.
That's never going to happen.
No.
So I love the story that's already unfolding. I want to talk about right as you're getting out of high school, you get your college scholarship. That's a huge moment for you because that is proven. That is like the proof in the pudding. Mm-hmm. You have put all this work in. You've grinded, and the universe yielded a result. It said you achieved it. You're going on your scholarship. Talk about that time of life. Talk about the family energy at that point when they find out your scholarship. You're going to college. I want you to dig into that a little bit because young listeners should know that, listen, you don't get things immediately.
No.
A lot of the times you don't get that instant fulfillment, instant gratification. No. That's what people want. But that is not how winners are made. That's not how championships are won. That's not how greatness is formed. It's formed over a period of time with perseverance, with consistency. So I want you to really dig into that period. It's a culmination of your work at that point. Mm-hmm. Talk about your life, and then going into college. What was Desi like? Take me back.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually that clean. I had went to my junior year, senior year, I had went to a bunch of camps, kind of like showcase camps, things like that. And I remember I was at Michigan State. My family was Michigan State fans, right? I don't really know why, honestly, but we were. I went to a Michigan State camp. They were recruiting me, and I had actually. It's going to be hilarious to say this out loud. I had actually cheated on the 40-yard dash. They had nobody there lined up at the start, and I knew that the 40 was one of my roughest things. So I took one full step forward, dropped my hand, and took off, right? So then it got me like a tenth faster, right? So that was kind of just a sidebar, but they had told my dad, they said, hey, make sure bring the family tomorrow, right? Make sure the family's here tomorrow, which you know what that means. Like, we're going to offer you, right? So whole family comes down. My recruiter comes back and he says, actually, we're going to take a longer look at a guy from Pennsylvania. And he's like, normally I would have had the authority to offer you the scholarship, but with the new coach, I don't have that authority. And I'm just like heartbroken. Like, you just ripped my lifetime dream out from under me, right?
And your family's there.
Oh, yeah, man.
I mean, this is supposed to be the massive moment.
Oh, yeah, man. Like life platter right there, right? And like, oh, nope, actually, we're gonna take a longer look, right, quote unquote.
Which are the worst words you've ever heard at that point.
Oh, absolutely, right. So I still have my senior season to play after that. So we kind of went through that, and I remember playing. No, it was the Thursday before my first Friday night game as a senior. Eastern Michigan had invited me down to a game. They brought me into the locker room. The head coach pulled me in immediately, me and my dad, and they're like, we want to verbally offer you a scholarship. And it was like just bam, like, whoa, out there, right? And we're just like kind of deer in the headlights look, like, oh my gosh, okay, Like, can I think about it for a second at least, like type of deal. Obviously it was a yes. So that's kind of how that happened. And then I actually got to play my whole senior year, like as a verbally committed athlete, which is really fun. And not a lot of people get, that experience. It's kind of nerve wracking and also extremely confidence boosting at the same time. Does that make sense?
100%. I mean, it puts pressure on you. Better perform now because you're considered a winner. You're going to Eastern. You're getting a scholarship. But with greatness comes a lot of responsibility and a lot of pressure. Gosh. So all of a sudden, it's like if anyone's keeping up with you, it's like, well, he's getting a scholarship to Eastern. He should be crushing us. If absolutely.
And my coach used it against me. There was one game I was playing like an idiot. I mean, I was just playing. I was soft and supple, and I was a middle linebacker, man. I remember at halftime, I'm all pissed off, and I'm sitting there, and my linebacker coach at the time was like, Mayner, when are you going to stop playing like a pansy and start playing like a D1 football player? I remember taking that towel off, and I was like, I'm here now. Like, copy that, boss, right? And like it was the second half was much better.
Think about this. You did something in here. You flipped a switch.
Oh, yeah.
You changed the persona. With what you do now, you understand how massive the mental side of it is.
Absolutely.
The mental side is where greatness lies. You know what I mean? Obviously, you need physical gifts. You need athleticism. You need skill work. You need understanding of your craft. But really, the secrets lie in between our ears, right? Doubt. Without a doubt.
And we spend so much money training for the physical side. And then, I mean, baseball's a great one, right? Let me spend thousands of dollars on your swing and you step up to plate and you got a 5-cent head, right? Those thousands of dollars just went out the window all because of your brain, right? But I mean, that's what happened that night at that halftime game. I just made a decision, right? Like, I mean, I was blessed with the size, and those physical attributes, but if my head wasn't there, I mean, obviously that first half I played like a pansy, right? That second half, not so much. The opponent was worried about me.
So there's one part I want to ask you about. So it sounds like through middle school and high school, you're kind of crushing it. Mm-hmm. You get into college. Now all of a sudden, the pool is larger. The talent is higher.
Oh, yeah.
The stakes are higher. You're getting to the point where, like, now you get scouted for the NFL if you're a good college player.
Yep.
Did you ever experience what a lot of people refer to as, like, imposter syndrome or, like, feeling like you didn't belong in a certain level or – because that comes down to the mind too. Like there are two Desis that could have existed. One that goes like, I can absolutely be an NFL player. I will look at my inadequacies and my shortcomings and whatever areas I need to step up. Like I'm going to grind on those the way I grinded on the things that I want. Yep. But there's another one that goes, no, man, you know what? I should have been born an inch taller. I should have been this, or I should have done that. Or I'm just Desi from this small town. There's no way that I can. Did you experience those things? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you experience when you go to that type of Division I is like, look, I was 4-sport all-state athlete in high school, right? Like I had 13.
Cream of the crop. You're at the top.
Like I had 13 varsity letters. I walk into a locker room, they're all state athletes with 13 varsity letters. I'm just average all of a sudden. I've never been average, right? And this probably sounds boastful or whatever, but like all of a sudden,
sure. Someone kicked out the pedestal and you're looking on an even playing field and going, like, wait a second, I have to separate from these people?
And I'm like, shit, I'm like the littlest. I'm like, I've never been the littlest at anything, right? So, I mean, yeah, absolutely. My first 2 years were very brutal. I mean, and it's kind of where I've built, my coaching program now is like 60% of college athletes will quit before their eligibility is up. 60%, 6 out of 10. The things that I learned by staying have built who I am now. Like, I mean, a job, a job, like that stuff's easy, right? All of the things that I learned just by having staying power, right, are second to none. They make life easier.
Why do you think most people quit?
I think because they don't know what they're getting into. They don't know what they're signing up for. They don't have the mental fortitude. They don't have the support system. I'll tell you right now, there's a little tiny Chinese restaurant next in downtown Ypsilanti that I spent many times sitting with my dad, who drove from Fenton to watch practice at the college level because he knew I needed it. And many times I sat there with tears rolling down my eyes saying, Dad, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do it. I don't want to do it. And there was times that he said, shut up, you're going to practice. And there was times that he said, hey, I understand. Because he knew if he said, hey, I understand, that I would be like, no, you can't. You don't play that game with me. I ain't quitting. So, I mean, just those little conversations, I mean, they meant the world to me, and they kept me there, and it was just the consistency. It was just showing up. It was like, just stay the course, just show up, right? Like, you're not going to die. Just show up. You'll be fine.
And it shows how massive it is to have the positive and correct influences and role models in your life.
Absolutely.
Because if we could go back in time with a time machine now, and the man that you are today could stand alongside the Desi that was in college and be motivated and telling him, like, you can get to the NFL, you can do this. You have to want it, and it's going to be ugly. It's going to be a bumpy road. You're going to get knocked on your face over and over. You're going to wake up in a lot of pain some days. But right now you could do it. It is within the realm of possibility.
Absolutely.
So it's like the people that you keep in your life will literally determine your greatness at some point.
No doubt.
Obviously, it has to be an internal thing.
It's got to be visceral.
Yes, but then your environment will absolutely play a part in shaping who you are.
Yeah, I mean, there was so many days. I mean, even when you ask the question about like middle school, high school, where did that come from? It's hard for me to answer, honestly. Like, I don't know, but there was no other thought than that. Like, it was just keep going, right? I'm not there yet. Keep going. How will you know when you're there? I won't. So keep going, right? Like, until somebody says stop, and I believe it. Type of deal, right? But the way I look back at it, it's the consistency that I saw and just the overall competitive edge. I just like to win. My dad was a winner. My grandpa was a winner. We just like to win. And I don't care if I'm competing with someone in my CrossFit gym and they don't even freaking know it, right? But I'm like, I got 11 reps. How many did you get? 10. I'm like, yeah, baby, right? And they're like, I didn't know we were competing. Oh, yeah, we weren't, right? Well, I was.
We always are.
Yes.
No, 100%. If you get addicted to the feeling of winning, it is a lifelong journey. You'll want to win in every single thing you do.
Absolutely.
It feels better to be a winner. It feels better to put in work and yield a positive result.
Yeah.
Anyone that would disagree with that statement has never been a winner. Because when you win, it's an infectious feeling.
Yeah.
Like when you really win, not just like you got lucky or like the game was super simple or you're playing against opposition that didn't present any type of challenge.
Right.
No, when you really win, when you put your heart into something and you win, it's like a drug addiction. It's from the first time I stepped in the cage and won my first fight. I won my first fight in 8 seconds. I armbarred a guy.
Nice.
It was like it consumes you from that point. You're like, how do I up the challenge and do this more?
Yeah, man.
Absolutely. So one of the things I wrote a note down that I want to dig into is at one point you had mentioned there was a gap between you and where you needed to be to get to the next level.
Yeah.
What do you think those gaps were? Because I look at you and I've met several NFL players and I know friends that play in the NFL right now. What was it that you were telling yourself was not there at that period of time, not the Desi that sits here today? Why did you think you couldn't get to the next level? What did your brain have you believing that you couldn't achieve your dream?
Honestly, it wasn't me. It wasn't my brain. Like, I had laid it all out. Like, I had trained to the absolute peak of my physical ability, I believe, at least with the resources that I had, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. I mean, there's some guys that I've met now and, some training type of systems that if I would have had, right, and I would have known about, might have been a different story, honestly. But it wasn't me. I took it all the way to the end until they said, like you're going to have to go to Europe, you're going to have to go to Canada type of thing.
So you had truly exhausted your resources. You tried everything
100%.
that your coaches said. You went all in.
Absolutely.
And then you just ran into you had no more guidance for getting to the next level.
It quickly turned into business. Right, like, oh, hey, come over here. You're right. You can train in this camp, and if you sign with me, and quickly to the business side. But yeah, I mean, for everything that I knew and all of the resources that I had and the people that I knew, I fully exhausted absolutely everything. Like, I have zero regrets around where my career as an athlete ended. No regrets at all. Like, I took it to the very, very, very end without going to another country.
Well, man, that's a really good feeling. That probably makes that chapter a little bit easier to close because transition periods are extremely difficult.
It wasn't a lot easier, honestly.
It was still extremely difficult.
It was still very hard. I mean, the second you got to hang that helmet up for the last time, man, is just, I mean, it's life-altering.
But at some point some part of your psychology, you could say, I really tried to go all in this. There's not the pain of regret of oh my God, I really gave 30% of what I should have.
Oh, no.
And if I would have just listened to my coaches, that would be a pain that would really eat at you.
I don't have that. That's for sure. I don't have that. There's lots of athletes that do, so I definitely don't have that. So yeah, hindsight wise, yeah, it's easier than having that regret. you know.
So let's talk about some of the coaches. I don't care if it's, their first ever coach all the way up to the college coaches that had a major impact on you, and why. What was it about those people that helped shape you as the man that you are today?
I mean, my first coaches were my dad, and he was always super hard on me. So was my grandpa. I mean, I could hit 3 home runs, and my grandpa would be like, "Yeah, that was a pretty good game." And Dad was always like, "Good game. Was that the best you can do?" And it was always like that question, like, "Is that the best that you can do? Because if it is, I'm proud of you. But if it's not, then I'm not proud of you because you didn't do as good as you could." Right? The effort piece, right? So, I think those were the first ones to me that really landed. I had a really good one in middle school. His name is Sean Fitzgerald. I think he's still a football coach around here. We've stayed in contact. Super intense, extremely competitive. He was actually my basketball coach. And I just kind of hung out with him. He used to play a lot of Gus Macker competitions, and he would bring me along. Like, I remember playing with the Flint boys from Michigan State, like, in the street. Like, he would just take me to hang out and play. So, like, in 8th grade, I was playing against, college basketball players, right? And getting beat up like crazy. But, man, when that 8th grader came to play against me, it wasn't nothing, right? And he just came alongside me. It was like, hey, I know this type of person. You're good. You're confident, you got the size, and he gave me that little extra attention, a little extra push. Took me under his wing because he had been there before, And I think, along with sports, it was kind of with life too, of like, I know what this is like when people think you're arrogant, people think you're conceited and things like that, but like you're not even halfway to your point of a goal yet, and they're already saying that type of deal. But I think it was the combination of believing in and challenging at the same time, right? Like, I believe in you, and because of that, I'm going to challenge you until you reach your peak potential, which I don't know what that is, so you're going to have to tell me when you're exhausted type of deal.
That is the perfect combination. And the funny thing is, when you are challenging someone to that degree, you're believing them, you're promoting their growth, and you're helping them. When they hit a level that maybe felt unreachable, as soon as they're there, you get to look up again. It's almost a never-ending journey. Okay, if we're here and we didn't even know if we could get here, well, then can we get there? Can we get there? It is a lifelong skill to learn how to be a winner to the fullest in everything that you do.
You remember you had heard me say, like, I kind of stopped competing in my mind when I became a teacher and coach, and didn't for 10 years. Well, when my dad died, it was like that flame just like reignited. I mean, like, it was immediate almost. I mean, it was like all of a sudden I'm the patriarch of the family. Like, people are looking at me like, I got to take care of this family. And it was like competitive Desi, like, came alive again. And I found that competition in the business world, honestly. I was like, I'm going to teach all of these leaders. I'm going to teach all these athletes how to win. That's what I'm good at. That's what I've been taught my entire life. That is the legacy that I've been left. That's the legacy that I'm going to build even stronger. And it was just like, boom. Right. And like you said, like with everything in business, you get up and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought that was impossible. And you're like, oh, look, 100 million other people have done that. Let's go get to the next level and the next level. And then when you can get another person there, when you can get another athlete there to sign that letter, like, we never thought they could. It's like, yes, now let's go.
100%. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate that a major tragic life event had to respark that flame. But when your own mortality is staring you in the face and you're starting to look at your life and saying, am I making the impact that I really could?
Yeah.
Am I really making the difference that I should? Am I living passionately from my heart? Those questions will keep you up late at night, but they'll also help you find answers that you seek.
No doubt.
And then as soon as you get back on the path, you're like, why did I ever leave it? This is what I'm meant to do. And when you can wake up in the morning and say, I'm doing something that I'm meant to do, it's incredibly powerful.
Oh, 2 most important days of your life: the day you're born, the day you figure out why. And I mean, it's weird to say this. It's less weird to say than I'm sure it is to hear from listeners. But like, my dad had to pass away for me to understand who I really was. I mean, he was larger than life to me. So there couldn't be two Roger Deans, right? But I'm Desi Dean, and he's not here anymore, so I'm going to carry that torch.
Yeah, and you're in his legacy, man. And you know for a fact that your father would be proud of the man that got himself back on track, that reignited the flame. He'd be disappointed if Desi let the flame go out and just monotonous routine sets in and you float into the sunset. No, he wants his young man out there crushing it.
Yep.
There's no doubt.
And that's what we want for all of our own kids, right? Like, stand on my shoulders. Right? Like, I'm building this thing. I want to leave my 2 girls. Take this where I never could. You know what I mean? Not like I took this as far as I can. Now you sell it or what? Like no. You take it where because like you're beyond me. You're the new generation type of thing, and I'm sure that's exactly what my dad wanted.
So right before we get into your story where you're at today with your leadership and development program and company, I want to talk about the dark period where you decide to call it quits from college sports. You decide that you're not going to the next level, and the way that you found yourself falling into the routine where the fire was a little bit diminished or there was a lot of debris on it, right? And now you're trying to live the normal life.
Yeah.
Okay, because like we are wired different. Like I am a horribly sore loser. I want greatness in everything. I want my crew to win supremely. Like, and if I don't have that in my life slowly dwindles downhill. And I get by, I can do it, but the passion is not there. I want to dig into that period because it's very important to study your psychology on how did you fall into that? What kept you from looking at the man in the mirror and saying, you're not living your potential right now. We need to do better than this. So let's dig into that period of your life, and then I want to talk about the rebirth, the phoenix from the ashes, the part two.
Yeah. You know, I think it was like when I was an athlete in middle school, high school, and college, it was consistency and passion, right? And that led to a lot of action, right? And I think once I had left, once I was done and became a teacher and coach, I dug into those handful of athletes that were me, that were like me. But what I found is those were few and far between. But I would dump my heart and soul into the 2 or 3 that I found, but they became less and less. And before you knew it, it was consistency with no passion. But my consistency was strong enough I was still better than most, right? And before you know it, I was like, there's 7 years of consistency. Right, and then I had a dream, and what had happened was, the varsity football coach had retired from teaching, and I called him and I said, I'm going for the job, right? Like it's my dream, right? I mean, I grew up here, went to high school here, played here, I'm in the Hall of Fame here. Like I want to be the head football coach, and that was a messy situation to say the least, and I did not get the job.
Why? A man with your credentials, your passion, your spark, you got to be able to say why if you can or if you're willing to.
There was a lot of politics involved. There was a lot of small town politics involved. You know, I don't think he took it as authentically as I meant it type of deal, which I understood. I mean, long time now, we still get along. But there was some small town politics there. They didn't want to change the guard quite yet, especially with somebody as young as I was. So it just didn't work out that way, but it was gut wrenching for me because I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Like that was my.
And you're used to winning. I mean, you're a winner. You probably set out for that, and you're like, I'm gonna win.
And that was a loss, right? And so it was almost like, well, what the heck? I was going to take them to win a state championship. I was going to be the greatest high school football coach that ever lived, right? Like that's just how I did things, right? Once that happened, it got worse. Consistency was less. Passion was almost gone. I mean, I always loved helping kids, right? Because that was just innate in me. And I was good at teaching life because I had good role models. But no passion, you know? And then from that, not getting that varsity football job to then probably.
And what are you doing for work at this period? So help me understand that. Okay, so
yeah,
you're teaching.
I was still teaching. Yeah, I was still teaching, coaching sports, right? But when I didn't get that varsity job, I started to coach less sports. I was kind of less engaged as a teacher. And then Dad passed. And that was like, okay, that's now 2 things that have kind of rocked my world. And that was the phoenix in the sun. That was the moment. That was like, okay, it's time to reignite. But the problem was I had no clue what I was reigniting. But it was in there, man. There was like a fire all of a sudden that hadn't been there in a while, and I missed it.
So basically that internal voice started whispering enough. It had probably been whispering you the whole time, but you had somehow shut it out.
Yeah.
You tap back into it. What is the first step back into the direction towards the man that you are
So
today?
the first step was, full-on grieving stage, right? But, as you well know, and I'm sure all your fighters know, sometimes the greatest form of mental clarity is physical exhaustion. So that's what I did. I went for a run, which I'm an offensive lineman. I don't like running, right? Which is funny because I actually did a trail half marathon at one point. But so I went for a run and completely to the point where I passed out on my front lawn basically. Sat there on a tree, completely broke down to nothing. And like, it was like, I was like bawling in my hands. And then like, I look up and I was like, it was like rage. And I was just like pissed at myself. I'm like, how did I let myself do that? Like, okay, let's go. And like literally from that day on, it was like, I'm gonna listen to every podcast. I'm gonna watch every YouTube video. I'm gonna read everything. I'm gonna like redo every life mission, every life vision. I have notebooks upon notebooks, books upon video. I mean, all the things. I interviewed all of my aunts and uncles. I talked to my grandma about my dad. Everything that I could think of in personal growth, I did it. And I just went down every single rabbit hole, figuring out where is that spark now, right? Like I'm not a competitive athlete anymore as far as like an official sport of basketball, football, or baseball, because that, ship had passed. But I was going to find it. And man, did I search, and I call it the seek phase of self-leadership. And that's what, I was hardcore into that. Like my wife thought I was crazy. I was reading books, writing notebooks down. I was incessant on how I did that and just everything. I had questions about everything to everyone. Like, hey, why are you doing what you're doing? What do you think you were born for? Right? And people aren't used to being asked that question. And I was like, because I was on a hell path to figure that out.
Yeah, you were on a mission.
Oh,
it had consumed your life. You're on a quest. It had hit you and you said, listen, this is the journey that I'm on. And it sounds like it wasn't a ramping up process into like, okay, it sounds like you flipped a light switch and you went into this almost through the pain and the damage and the anger and all those things. You went all in on something. And that luckily that happened to be rebuilding who you were meant to be. Yeah. Because that same fire could have destroyed you if it was aimed the wrong direction.
Yeah, I'm an extremist. There's no doubt about that. So going all in on the right thing that led me down the right path was definitely good because it could have been very destructive.
So one more question about that stage of your life. During the period where you're in the shell stage, your flame is diminished, you're not really being your fullest, you're married at the time.
Yeah.
Do you have children at the time?
Yeah, so
did you notice that it affected your relationship or you as a father or all those things because you're not being yourself. You're not being your fullest self. Talk about that, and then we're going to start reigniting the flame.
Yeah, absolutely. So we was married. So my dad had met my wife, Courtney. She was also a Division II college athlete. She was a softball player. She still holds records there, too. She was a pitcher. And my dad had known that my first was on the way. And I'll never forget that because it was like one of 5 times in my life that I saw him cry. And he was like opening up the food pantry when we told him to. And he like stopped, dropped the bag of chips, and started crying. I was like, I don't know what's happening. Like type of deal.
My dad's a superhero. He doesn't cry. He doesn't even have tears.
Right?
There's no tear ducts.
Literally seen that like 5 times in my life. Right. So he knew that she was on her way. So when he passed and I had left teaching, there was a moment that I was like, I'm not supporting my family. Like, who am I? I'm a horrible man. Like, I'm not the patriarch. What is happening right now? And insert Courtney. She believed in me more than I believed in myself many times. And she almost like inserted like as my dad sometimes, like, hey, you're onto something good, so keep going type of deal. I remember putting on cold, muddy boots at 5 a.m. in the morning to go work construction. That, come to find out, I didn't want to do construction. I wanted to lead a construction business. I wanted to lead anything, honestly. And her just going, hey, just keep listening to your stuff. Keep taking your courses. I was taking digital courses, listening to, anything I could, right? While working also. And she believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. And that was the spark that I needed, But yeah, there was a time period when I was like, I'm trying really hard, and I haven't hit no pay dirt in a while, and that's okay. I've been there before, but the stakes are way higher now. I got a kid on the way. I got a mortgage. We ended up selling our house because literally we couldn't make it work. We sold my house, moved into with my mom. All those types of things. It was a dark time for sure.
Honestly, those times are extremely valuable, though. That makes you appreciate what you're doing now way more, makes you appreciate your relationship more, makes you appreciate your life more.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it sounds like because when your father passed, he had cast an incredible shadow by being such a powerful man to you. He had cast an incredible shadow, and you were under his wing, you know what I mean? And now with that gone, and you're the one that has to stand in the light, and you have to cast the powerful shadow.
I'm the wing.
That is a big role to fill. And like, thank God you had an amazing woman by your side that was able to build you up during that period, because like strong people are not used to being, you know, in that place. Winners are not used to being the place where like we almost need to be built up by somebody around. That is we're always the builder. We're always the powerful wing, you know what I mean? So that's an incredible part of your story, especially that through any adversity, through moving back in with your parents, through all of these things, your woman stayed by your side. And that's massive shout out to Courtney, is her name?
Courtney.
Massive shout out. You know what I mean? Because like that is where magic happens. That's where growth happens. That's where you can reignite the person that someone's meant to be. So when does the ball start really get rolling? How do you start getting back on track? Do you take on other companies first, or did you launch Mayner Leadership initially? Let's start to like build up now the phoenix from the ashes.
Yeah. So what I'd went to, I'd found a John Maxwell certification in leadership. I mean, he's like, you know, the leadership guru of all time.
5 levels of leadership.
You got it, like 100-something books. I mean, it could be 200 now. Who knows? And I went to a certification there in Orlando. So I took the class. It was like, you know, you should get this class done in like 3 months. I had done like 30 days, right? Like, and then I went to the certification, had a great time, and was working with business kind of consultants and stuff there. You know, I was like, you know what? I know a lot about sports. And I remember this one marketing girl was like, that's it. You got to work with athletes. And I was like, yeah, no, you know, I get it, but the money's in the business, you know, business side and everything. And it's all, when you look back at it, it's like weird to think of, right? And so coming to find out, I had one call with this bigger business, like it was like a COO, right? And I had like prepared all night for this call. The call lasted 5 minutes. I said like 7 words. It was an epic failure. I remember walking upstairs and I was like, I don't know what to do. I suck at this business thing.
Explain the failure to me.
I mean, I was pitching him basically. Yeah. Right. And I mean, everything that I had prepped, he just overtook the whole conversation, and like couldn't get a word in. I didn't have any experience with this. Like I was an athlete talking to a COO. But I mean, I had all the training and everything. I knew I could help him, but that didn't matter. Right. I didn't have the confidence. Right. I didn't have the confidence in that world yet. So I went upstairs and I'm like, I'm not a business guy. Like, I'm an athlete. And my wife is like, so help athletes. Right? And I'm like, yeah, but then I was like, oh, maybe. You know, I'm like, if I would listen to what my wife says the first time, I would be way further, way faster, honestly, man. Like, I come kicking and screaming every single time, you know. But so we started to go down that road, and I'm like, yeah, but how are we going to help athletes? Like, there's so many, what, you want me to do football skills? Like, that's everybody. Like, you know, everybody does that. They're like, no, help them with what you do already in the classroom and in the weight room, you know. And I'm like, okay. And so then I started really looking into that, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of things with the mental piece that are missing. And I hate the statistic of 60% college athletes quit before the eligibility sub, because I had watched so many of it happen. Like, oh, look, so-and-so is a blue chip athlete. And I'm like, they'll be done by the second year. They don't know what they're getting into. They don't have the mental fortitude. They don't have the support system. They're not going to make it. And guess what? I was right 9 out of 10 times, right? Oh, the so-and-so quit. They twisted their knee, or their academics weren't in line, or they got homesick, or whatever it was, right? Like, yeah, okay, sure, they quit. That's what happened, right? So from there, I was like, all right, there's something to this mental piece. So then I really dove into it, really started creating the curriculum around it.
Now, are you working for someone else's business at this point and doing this, or is this all under your name and your brand at this point?
This is all under my name and my brand at this point. I was just doing construction. I mean, I was swinging a hammer on the side to make ends meet, honestly, which they weren't meeting, by the way. So it was major hustle mode, no doubt. But I mean, it was like, hey, sign your athlete up with me, and like, we'll get them there. Just like, I don't know exactly how, but trust me. Right, like I've been there, I've been through this. It works, type of deal, right? But yeah, it's all under my own name. I mean, I didn't even know. I remember naming Mayner Leadership, and I was like, that's just not unique. There's no catchy, and I'm like, but now I'm so glad, because like the name means everything.
That's
to
your
me.
family legacy. That's your
Exactly.
story. That's your father and grandfather saying, yes, you're doing what you're meant to do.
Absolutely.
I hear it as that way. I don't hear it. So how did that name first come to be? Because I want to know that. Did you just say, hey, it's Mayner Leadership? And that was that simple of a conversation? Was it in a discussion with your wife?
I tried probably 100 different things. And I'm just like, I don't like it. Oh, that's gimmicky. And I'm just like, I mean, why are we trying to be so fancy? Why don't we just call it Mayner Leadership?
Why not be authentic? Why not be who you are? Why not say, you know what? My grandfather and father passed down an incredible legacy, and they were strong men, and because of that, I am the man that I am today, and that is what I'm going to give to others. And that's the Mayner legacy.
You got it. And that's what it turned out to be. It was like, you know what? It ain't got to be fancy. It's got to mean something to me. And that's all that matters. That's all that matters. That it means something to me. I mean, I could tell my whole story with this logo, which is pretty cool.
Want it. Tell me.
You want it?
Yeah, I want it.
So, you got the peaks, right, which is obviously the M and the L, but each peak, so you starts on the inside, which is the brain. Starts on the inside. Then you go around, and things were great in high school, right, and college, and all of a sudden, guess what? Grandpa passed away, valley, right? Dad passed away, valley. What? Now, how do you get to the next part? You start back on the inside, in the brain, right? It's all inside, right? You got to find that. You got to find that fire inside, and then it's not saying it's not going to be hard. You're going to go around that curve, and you're going to have to grind it, right? But you're going to hit a point, and then you're going to start to peak again, and then that's where this continuous. This is an arrow for the L, meaning it's never stopping. It stops when I die, because I want to know how far I can get, how many leaders I can help, and how many athletes I can get to the next level.
Don't ever forget to put that into your discussions. Like the fact that you were almost willing to skip by that should go into everything because it shows the man that you are. It shows that you want to go that extra step and you thought about the peaks and the valleys is what people refer to it as, and that the work starts internally and then you put that into a graphic design to encapsulate your vision. Don't skip that. That was phenomenal. Really
Thanks,
good breakdown.
Thanks.
You know, especially as another leader that has created several brands and you know, builds athletes and fighters like that. You know what that is? That's passion. That's not just I'm going to pay a graphic designer, give me a Mayner Leadership logo. Hey, thanks very much, man, because I know I have a great product. No, that's caring about every step of the process. That's what greatness is caring about every step in the process, even the ones that you think don't really matter. Super small detail. It's minor. I can skip this. I don't have to. No. Greatness is a full picture. So let's really start to talk about when you're getting traction going, because you're still dreaming at this point. You're working construction. You're swinging a hammer. You're trying to bring this thing to life. What's your first big break, or when do you really start saying like, hey, this thing might take off?
Yeah.
And what timeline are we talking? Like, what age are we at this point? And, you know, how long ago was this?
Yep. So I was married. I had the first one, Hadley. She was alive and doing well. She was probably 1 at the time. And it all started when I remember I had a high school football player. His name was Justin. And they signed up with me. And he was like hell-bent to go to the next level. Great kid, good character, good grades. But kind of came from, you know, not a broken family, but didn't have the support system that I had, right? Which, I mean, honestly was hard to compete with, right? Lots of kids don't have that. I was super blessed. And I was like, I got this. And I remember when the mom was like, yep, let's do it. And like, I wasn't in sales. I was a teacher, man. Like, I was just like, yes, oh my gosh, I got my first client. This is so awesome. And
what are the terms of this? What length of time were you going to be working with a child? Like, what was the first deal that you did?
It was like $200 a month. I was going to talk to the kid for like an hour a week. I had workbooks for him. We were going to be in a group chat kind of all the time. I mean, I was going to be walking side by side with this kid, basically. Like, we worked out together a couple of times.
The wing, right?
Yep, absolutely. I was going to be that for him, no doubt. And it was, I think we signed up for 3 months, kind of a 3-month contract now, and it was great. It was great. I ended up working with him for almost a year, which was just so cool. And he ended up making it to the next level. He didn't play ball, so we kind of walked through all that. But you know, I kind of prepped him for what all of this entails, right? Like, hey, you sure you want to play ball? Because this is not for the faint of heart type of deal. Like, I'm not trying to scare you away, but I don't want you to sign up and then quit, because you will regret that quitting, you know, type of deal. So we worked through that, and now he's like insanely, he's in academia, and he's so smart, and he's killing it in college, and he's doing really good. He's probably out of college by now, actually. But kind of from there on out, then I started using that testimonial, those referrals, and then started building the athlete side. And then when I kind of got busy doing athletes, what I had found is I was gaining confidence. So what happened was, and just kind of some of my networks and things like that, some of the parents who were business people were like, hey, this thing you got going on about mental toughness and confidence and expectations and things like that, like, hey, do you do that with companies? Right? And I was like, well, absolutely. Right? And then I'm like, do we do that with companies? Like, is that a thing? Yeah, it's a thing, right? In the early parts of business, when people say, do you do this? You're like, absolutely. And then you go figure it out, right? So that's what kind of happened. I kind of started attracting that older client. When I say older, I just mean, the business people who were athletes, or they were competitive, or they were still athletes. And we started doing some of that kind of same exact work with them. And what I learned was like, oh my gosh, I've been a part of a team my entire life. And guess what I was pretty good at doing? Building and uniting a team. Guess what doesn't matter? What the sport is. Whether it be the finance world, a plumbing company, it doesn't matter. A football team, doesn't matter. A team's a team, right? Here's how to unite it, and here's how to clarify it. So we started doing some of that, and I loved it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if I could just tell this finance company to just get their foot on the line and let's run some sprints, which I don't think any COO ever actually let me do that. So what I had to do is I had to figure out how to do that in the mind. How can we break you down, right, with honesty and with transparency and build that trust so that we can have conflict, right? When we talk all the time, I mean, you got guys that they'll spar like crazy and get real heated, and then at the end of it, they'll hug each other, right? And it's like same thing in football. We get a knockout, drag out, but at the end of it, we're still on the same team. We got to teach teams how to do that in the business world, right? So that's kind of what we started doing. So what happened, so like that kind of morphed into like athletes. So what I had to do is I had to replicate myself, right? So we've got a guy now who I actually coached for a year. His name's Cole Russell. He's our director of athletics. I coached him as an athlete for a year. He was an All-American soccer player. And so now he kind of runs most of my athletic stuff, right? So I work with him mostly, and I recruit more coaches, more athletic coaches, just so we can help more athletes get to the next level and be prepared. So that's where so now I spend most of my time in the business world, in the small business and the corporate world, which comes full circle because my first call, I was a complete failure in that arena, but I wasn't being me. I was trying to step into their world. I was like, no, this is my world. You have a team. I know how to unite a team. You're a leader. I know how to lead. I don't care what you're doing in the day or what your craft is. My craft is leadership and building a team. So it was like, once you start learning those things, how to be authentic in them, oh my gosh, it's night and day. It's a totally different world.
And the beautiful part is these are universally needed concepts across every spectrum. Like you said, this is a product that almost everything on earth could use. You could do this type of work in families of reuniting people. Yep. Because it's working here. Mm-hmm. And when people grow internally, the external changes, right? So like learning how to transform people and realizing their relationship with the people around them and their team and those things drastically improves results. It improves happiness. It improves culture. It improves all of these things because it is the work that needs to be done, but it's the work that most people avoid. It's way easier to be like,
away from it.
Clean that room than work on your mind because it's less tangible. Mm-hmm. Looking inward, you're not really sure where to begin versus like a simple task like I can shut my brain off and go into autopilot and clean this room versus like asking really difficult questions, admitting failures, admitting shortcomings, talking about the conversations I didn't really want to get into. That's where the magic happens. That's cleaning the mental room, right? Yeah. So this is a phenomenal product, and you did what all businesses do. At a certain point, you realize you can't clone yourself. Yeah. Okay. And you have to scale. You have to, if you want to improve your ability to affect a large audience. Right. I mean, because you could easily stay small. So then you start scaling where you're bringing in like-minded individuals, especially those that you've built through your processes.
That's the best.
Exactly. Because now you're seeing not only you are effective, but your system is effective to a degree that you can train other people and they can have the impact. Yeah. That is really the proof of everything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like I can build other leaders that then can shape other leaders.
That was a big difference for me of like being from like the solopreneur I'm helping clients to like building a team of Mayner Leadership. Like, oh wait, I can help my team, and I can now provide opportunities to families that I can provide a dream for someone else who can then help the people. Oh wow, I didn't even that was a bonus. I didn't even know that was a thing. And wow, I became really passionate about that. It was like my main reason for like wanting to scale and like, let's grow this thing so that I can help more people do what they were born to do and support their families, build communities. I'm like, oh man, I didn't even sign up for this part. This is awesome. Right.
And then it just makes the dream more exciting. More passion pours back into your life. More thankfulness and gratitude. And like, you know what? Because you know what it is? That father's wing. You are now expanding the wing to so many families.
Yeah.
That Mayner legacy is being passed on through the lessons that you were taught as a child to many families. And this type of work and development drastically changes people's lives. It changes their future. And then think about the amount of ripples into the universe a changed human being creates.
Yeah.
A changed human being is better for his family, for his work environment, for his children, for the future, for our society.
Yeah.
More than ever, we have an anxiety epidemic. We have all of these things in our culture. A lot of this is because inner work needs to be done.
Yeah, that deep work inside, deep in the soul.
So right now, more than ever, we need this type of guidance and this type of coaching.
Yeah.
Give me a vision board or your 3 to 5 year, 10-year, whatever you want. Mayner Leadership is doing extremely well now, but what do you see it growing into? What are the next avenues that challenge you? How do you continue to be that person that, like at the beginning of the podcast, we step up a level? What do? We look up. We say, what's the next level? What does that look like for your company?
Yeah, I think what it looks like 3 branches. It looks like an athletic branch, a small business branch, and an education branch. I've circled back into schools, even though I shut that out hard for a lot of years. I circled back after COVID, honestly, and these teachers need help. These students need help. We need to grow the next generation of leaders, and we need to do it in a way that isn't fluffy. Right? They need to know that it is brutal out there, and we need to prep them for that. We need to build resiliency. We need to create tough citizens, right, that can sit down at a table and have a heated debate about something, right? Those types of leaders, we need to build those, right, which means we need to support the people who are leading them, which are the teachers, right? So I think it has 3 branches, right, and I think that there's multiple leaders in each one of those branches that aren't me. Right, I see myself every day coaching my leaders, leading my leaders, right, and running the business and trying to expand, in content and things like that, just so we can help as many people as we possibly can, so I can make this legacy as big as I possibly can, because the legacy is that wing. The legacy is creating tough people, and at the end of the day, I was born to believe in and challenge people. I don't care who it is. I don't care how successful they are or how big of a failure they are. If they want to sign on, I'm going to believe in and challenge them to the ends of their wit, because that's what people did to me, and that's what I think this world needs.
Honestly, you're the general, you have your lieutenants, and you're building soldiers. That's what's taking place. We always use that reference here. Like, I'm a general, I'm trying to build other leaders, and then we're trying to build an army underneath that at one point will grow into lieutenants, into generals, into. So it is a massive outward effect. We make a tremendous change. So the final thing I'm going to ask you on the podcast before we wrap this thing up is, how do you keep yourself growing and not falling into a state of complacency about, I'm doing really well, my leader's doing well, I'm continuing to challenge them. But the greatest thing that you can do for them is to continue to grow yourself. How does Desi keep growing?
Yeah, the law of the lid, right? Like, leadership is a glass ceiling. If you don't keep raising it, you're gonna fall short. Your company will only grow as much as you do personally, right? So I think for me, it's finding people that are more successful than me, who are further along than me, and asking them questions, right? And getting with them. I think you need a mentor. I think you need a coach. I think you need a cheerleader. I think you need somebody to challenge you all the time. So, I have physical trainers, right? I have mentors that, have sold $25 million companies and been through every ringer of the up and down in business, right? I got cheerleaders in my family still. I go to speak on a stage somewhere and I got 25 people in the front row, just like it's back in high school and I'm at a football game, right? But reading constantly, the same stuff that I always did, that I've just created habits around, right? I read, I YouTube, I podcast all of the time. But now I'm kind of changing it and challenging myself and doing more creating instead of consuming, which is way harder for me, honestly. So I still consume, but now I'm diving more into the creating. And I've found that I even need people to help me with that. I need people to ask me questions like you are. And then people are like, oh my gosh, there's a treasure trove inside your mind. All you got to do is ask you a question, right? So, but I mean, it's for sure constantly challenging myself, getting my sleep, constantly fighting the good fight of eating decent, and, working out 5-6 days a week. And now I've been competing in CrossFit, which is like a whole new game for me, which honestly I am loving. It is so much fun, and I am failing all of the time, and it's great, honestly, just because I'm like, oh man, in 2 years I'm going to hammer out those those pull-ups, and we're about to do the Murph, which I'm super excited for, but just all the different ways. But I think the most important part is the people in your life. It was really hard after I lost Grandpa and Dad to find the people. Like I probably even made mistakes in the people that I chose, because I wanted mentors, I wanted coaches, because I always had those people in my life, but I made some mistakes around them. And man, when you find the right ones, which I have now, oh my gosh. So, I mean, it's, and I remember my mentor right now, I remember telling him, I'm like, he's a multimillionaire. He's living the dream, right? And I'm just like, I don't know how I can ever repay you for what you've helped me with and the advice that you've given me. And I remember all he said, he goes, in 20 years, do the same for a young you. And I'm just like, I want to be able to get to the point that I say that to somebody. You know what I mean? That I have the financial freedom and the time freedom, and I've helped that many people to say, you know what? Let me sit with you for a whole day, completely free, and let me change your life. Right? And why? Just because I want to. Just because I can.
And I can actually testify to the fact that I have a lot of ultra successful people in my life that had that exact mindset. They're living such great lives, and they're so thankful and appreciative for the life that they're able to live, that they just want to see that in others. Real winners, real champions in this life, real killers out there just crushing goals and acquiring their dreams. They want to see that in others. Yeah. They want to hear awesome stories. Yep. They want to see people that are trying to change the world for the better, because they're real winners. Yep. And winners focus on winning. You know what I mean? So man, your story was incredible today, Desi. I enjoyed sitting with you very much. I'm excited I'll be following your journey online and seeing what you're doing. And maybe I'll even bring you in one day to I've got people that fight in the UFC, people that fight all over the world, tons of professionals, and a bunch of dreamers in this building. Bring you in, bring you alongside a bunch of our athletes and just have you give a talk to them. You know what I mean?
That'd be awesome, man.
So, man, I really enjoyed it today. The last thing I want you to do right before we get off the podcast is if someone wants to reach out to your company, they want to contact you, they want to get in touch with one of your specific people, how do they do so? Is it best through the website? Is it best through social media? Just go ahead and do a shout out for the company, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Desi Mayner at Mayner Leadership. Our athletic piece, our mental game coaching, is mlathletics.com. Right, and there you just fill out the form, and we'll get a hold of you. We'll get in touch with you, myself or one of our coaches, probably Cole. We'll get in touch with you, and we'll hammer that out. On the business side, www.maynerleadership.com. Right, MAYNER leadership.com. Reach out to there, fill out the form. We'll be in touch with you within probably 12, 24 hours, and then we'll get this ball rolling. But it's not for the faint of heart, and it ain't fluff.
And to be honest, he mentioned just, not long ago on the podcast that, we get into the nitty-gritty, we get into the difficult. That is the truth, guys. Yeah. The truth is difficult. The truth is uncomfortable. The truth is not always what you want it to be. But guess what? The truth doesn't owe you anything. The truth doesn't owe you anything. It is your responsibility to have a relationship with reality and the truth and accept things the way that they are, and then work to build based on that reality, not to say, well, I don't like that reality. Yep. That doesn't create progress. The hard work and the nitty-gritty and the grind is in coming together, facing the difficulties, facing the uncomfortable, and growing as people and communities. So, Desi, it was an honor to sit with you today, man, and we'll wrap this podcast up.
Hey, thanks very much, man. I always say on the very end of all of my mindset, my mental game coaching, you need to always challenge the mindset and focus the action around that mindset.
It's a perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you.